A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down.
Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothe the grass, which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not ye what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, is set to bring immortality to the nation of Israel, the elect, via establishing the tabernacle of David. As we talk about the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, he is coming to take down this current world ruled by Esau, Edom, and establish a righteous kingdom, which is synonymous with the throne of David. That's scriptural, which is a government that's going to run this world in righteousness.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today is a continuation on the book of First Timothy, all right, which we made it, to the third chapter. Okay, and this chapter, all right, puts emphasis, on the qualities, of, a leader, okay, within the church. Okay, because as we, come into, this ministry, we come in very immature, still have, a perspective from this world, because it's a process of being, born again, and develop, to being a leader, amongst the body, and ultimately all here, to be cultivated, and to being leaders. The Lord has us here, to be what? Those judges, okay, as before, which we'll get there. But so when you go here, all right, First Timothy 3:1, and some of these, precepts, I use, to all right, put Jake in the box. This is, the woman, when you first come into the truth and you got a woman, all right, don't be surprised, all right, if she First Timothy 3:2 your ass, all right, within the first couple weeks. But we're gonna get some balance, dealing with it. That's another thing about maturing, in the faith. All right, we understand why we're here. And we understand why particular things are said, pertaining to these certain epistles, okay, within the church. All right. So let's go let's go here, okay, to the book of First Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1. It said, "This is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desired the good work." You know, so if a man, has a mind, to want to take, leadership role within the church, that's a good desire. All right. But it's not a position to have, all right, to have, just for the sake of, having a position for clout, to be looked at in a certain light, to be over people, you know. Well, not because every position within the body is a position of servitude. Okay, there's rank, there's certain orders that go out, all right. But the spirit, that's within every position, every office, okay, is the office, okay, of servitude, you know. So, you know, because even let's go here. I think that's the book of Luke. All right, let's go to the book of Luke. Because the way, the Lord is structuring us, as leader, is not of the fashion of this world. Okay, it's from a spirit of humility. That's another thing that Yahweh Shai is breeding. Is humble leaders. Because you can be, firm and assertive. Okay, as a leader and still have humility. That's the balance. All right, that we're learning from Yahweh Shai. All right, and from the men whom Yahweh Shai has set up to be leaders of the church. Okay, this is Luke 22, 2 and 24. It says, "And there was also a scribe among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest. And he said unto them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors." Okay, so he's going into how the heathens, okay, how they lord over, the people that's under them, where you have a system to where, the many benefited the few, just like the system that you have today, where you have billions of people on the world, and their labor and their energy, okay, it forwards, okay, and only benefits the few, okay, but they have all this authority over the many, with this, that's out of balance, okay, and it says, verse 26, "But ye shall not be so, but he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief, all right, is he that doth serve." And this is why when we go down in the book of Timothy, we're going to see why the Apostle Paul says some of the things, that he was saying. Okay. So those that are chief amongst, the body, have more responsibility, all right, to serve the body. All right. Because we're not being put, in particular positions in office to feed our own belly. Okay. And that's why when you go here, we're going to link it up. All right. First Timothy 3 and 2. Okay. All right. So now, as we go here, First Timothy 3 and 2 says, "A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, and apt to teach." You know, so someone that has, a high position in the church. Okay, Apostle Paul, um, he suggests, okay, that he have one wife. Okay, now remember Apostle Paul, a lot of things that he say, are law, okay, and are decrees. You see? And in certain instances, okay, it will be ideally for a man, who will have a high office because that man will be, all right, given a lot of responsibility, overseeing, the spirits, the souls of men. Okay. And, dealing with the woman, when you start dealing with women, especially multiple, they can become a distraction. All right. Now, let's say a man already has two wives or three wives or whatever the situation was then, but he moved up to be a bishop. Was he to put away, a wife or two? Okay. No, he's the Apostle Paul. All right. Is going into an ideal situation. Now, certain things, these certain qualities, all right, are needed, to be in a position of a leadership, vigilant, okay, which means going into, man, let's get this word vigilant, all right, sober, being sober minded, being level headed, you know, because you can sip, you can drink, all right, but most of all, being sober in the spirit, okay, and then, not being, all right, a slave, to the strong drink, okay. So let's go here. This word vigilant. Get some of these qualities,
Strong's G 3524. Nephalios.
they follow us.
Nephalios.
Okay. It says sober, temperate. Okay. It says abstaining from wine, either entirely or at least from its immoderate use. Okay. It says of things free from all wine, all vessels, all offerings. So, being moderate, this word vigilant, just doing things in moderation. Okay. And then you go here, let's see if Google give us another definition. All right. Um, let's see. All right. So you go here to the Google. All right. Let's pull it up real quick. All right. So you go to the Google. All right. So you go to the Google. All right. It says vigilant. Okay. It says keeping careful watch. All right. For possible danger or difficulties, which we in the time now, where we have to be on our watch. And that's a full-time job within itself. And this is why someone, that was in a position that was entrusted of being, a leader, okay, he will have particular duties, okay, of being watchful. And this time, we have, the office of being on our watch, man, on the lookout, watchful, observant, okay. So someone that's in a leadership position should be knowing what's happening, to be privy to what's going on. It says sharp eye, keen eye, attentive, on alert, on one's toes, okay, with one's eyes open, man. As Jacob say in this time, keeping your ear to the street, and that's a full time responsibility, especially with so much going on, man. So someone, of a leadership position will be vigilant, okay, of what's happening, the happiness, man. You know, so um there's certain things that's required, of us all, and the more, the more responsibility we're given, the more of these qualities are required. Okay. Because I say, whether you have a woman, two women, or three women, all right, which we're gonna get into that, okay, because that's not man's not doing nothing wrong, okay, but a man has to measure, okay, his situation, okay, and his office and what's required, because even the men that have multiple women, all right, you go here, just bring balance to it, all right, because the office of bishop was not because women, all right, are hypergamous, okay, so a man of a higher rank, okay, women are going to be drawn to that man, and that man has to be mindful of his office, okay, when dealing. Okay. Now let's go here, just to bring balance to it, So a man, more responsibility, is only so much, okay, he will be able to do, in a marital situation, that's that could be overwhelming. Okay. So he has to be mindful. All right. That's why you go here to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and Paul is giving his spiritual advice. Okay. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 6. All right. He says, but I speak this by permission and not by commandment. For I would that all men even, all right, were even as myself. So he's giving, his spiritual advice, and not as a commandment that he wished, all men could be as he was, which he has the spirit not to deal with women, and he was extremely productive. Okay. He was extremely potent. Okay. As a teacher, as a prophet. Okay. But that was his lot. Okay. It says that was his office. It said, but every man have his proper gift of the Most High, one after this manner and one after another, after that. Okay, so every brother, the Lord has their proper gift, and we gotta be mindful that, we're not doing too much, just because we can, deal with multiple women. All right, we have to consider, okay, how does this affect my office? Okay, how does this affect, my expectations in the spirit? Okay, we have to consider that, so just because, it's lawful to have multiple women, all right, this ministry is not at the forefront, all right, of heaping women to ourselves, man. Okay, so the Apostle Paul, he understands that every brother has their own situation. Every man, has their proper gift, because the Lord, he's making move and he's putting things together, for the sake of women being covered, and delivered. Okay. And as men, all right, no matter what move that the Lord is making, dealing with that, we have to be loyal to our office. And that's why, all right, when you go here, all right, verse 29, it says, 1 Corinthians 7 and 29, it said, but this I say, brethren, that the time is short. It remained that both they that have wives, all right, be as though they had none. Okay. Because as we're tapped into our office, man, and there's so much going on, there's going to be circumstances where, we're going to be missing the action. We're going to be out of pocket, man. We don't have the availability as the men of this world. We're coming into the clutch, so the Lord is requiring more of his men. Okay. And as the Lord is requiring more, from his men, okay, what we have to understand, all right, is that we're going to be out of pocket more. Okay. We're going to be isolated more, tapped into these things, man. And Lord willing, hey, the Lord has mercy on the whole house, man. That's the one of the reasons why, brothers do what they do. Brothers want their houses to be saved, you know. And the best thing that we can do, okay, is to, be pleasing to the Lord within our office, man. So there's certain times and certain situations, man, where, hey, no matter if you got one wife, all right, or four wives, whatever it is, hey, guess what? You're going to be out of pocket, man. Okay, because of what's required of us in the spirit. You see, and even when you go here, all right, I looked it up. Even someone that was a king. Okay, let's do Deuteronomy. I believe it was 17. Yep, 17 and 17. It says, let's go into it. All right, this is all. I'll just get to the point. Deuteronomy 17 and 17. This is speaking of a king. It said, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. All right, that his heart turn not away. Okay, You see, so of course, as a king, and all right, because men, all right, a higher status will have more women. Okay, kings especially will have the most women. You see, that wasn't supposed to be at the forefront. His mind was supposed to be tapped into rulership, ruling in righteousness. Okay, he doesn't have this position for the sake of getting wives. Now, wives come with the position, okay, but being tapped into, if you're this at the forefront, okay, of your priorities, all right, guess what? Those women gonna turn your mind away. You're gonna be distracted by women and not occupied in that office. It says, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. Okay? Because it's not a position to where you use this position to feed your belly, your lust, women and wealth. Those things come with it. If you're a wise, righteous king, just as King Solomon, which eventually he got weak to women, but for a while he was able to manage, okay, his affairs and be a wise ruler, okay, with the women and the wealth that he had, that came to him, okay. But what things, should the king been occupied in? And it shall be when he sit upon the throne of his kingdom that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of the which is before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read, all right, therein all the days of his life. So the king will have to be well versed in the law, understanding the righteousness of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. Okay, that's what's the forefront. That's the focal point. Okay. So the thing is not, the multiple women is wicked. Okay. What is the thing of, okay, what's the priority? Especially dealing with the office, that a man has. All right. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord. All right. Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, his power to keep all the words of this law and these statutes to do them. All right. So the king had, a high office, okay, and he was given a lot of responsibility, okay, and the priority was establishing righteousness, man. Okay, the women and wealth, there was a afterthought, okay, because hey, serving the Lord in righteousness, hey, the Lord gives his men, okay, their desires, man. Okay, and right now, understand the position we in, all right, we're behind enemy lines. Okay, and there's only so much that we can do, especially as an Israelite man in this society. We're so limited. Okay, so we have to be, mindful. Okay, of the circumstances that we're in. Okay, and they look different from each brother. Okay, so going back when you go to First Timothy 3. All right, First Timothy 3:2 says a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, diligent, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. And that's another thing, being sharp, in the scriptures, man. And that's why that's another thing, we have to give ourselves over to studying, you know. We can't, neglect, okay, tapping into studying, no matter how long we've been in, there's always, room for learning new things, and also, revisiting, old breakdowns and, old history, and, tapping back in, being sharp, because that's a beautiful thing, that, me personally, I'm guilty of slacking, in moments, but there's no greater feeling than just being sharp, understanding what you're talking about, really thoroughly being able to, to expound on what you're teaching, okay, with facts, being able to tie everything together, and it's for the sake of the edification of the church, to make these things easily understood, okay. So we have to be what? Apt to teach, and that's why, Um, you go here, Revelation 1, okay, and 3, it says, "Blessed is he that readeth, all right, and they that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand." You know, and there's a blessing with reading, man. You know, being tapped into this book. You know, there's blessings that come with that. Okay, the Lord dealing with that, man. All right, and that's why even in Second Timothy, the 3rd chapter, okay, you go to no, I think it's the 2nd chapter, 2 Timothy 2 and 15. All right, it says study. You know, we got to put that time in. That's how we're apt to teach. Study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, so we in the spirit. All right, we have to stay in the spirit to study. You know, to be studious. You know, because you're in a position. You know, when men look up to you, the church, looks at you in a certain way. You want to be on point. And so we're not gonna know every single thing every time, man. We want to be all right, accurate as possible, majority of the time. You know, we want to. Our apostle and elders set the standard of being, studious, man, to being scholarly in this thing. You know, so we're apt to teach, man, to give, sound doctrine. Okay, it says, "Study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman." You got labor in this thing that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, so going back, First Timothy, these are all the qualities, okay, of a solid leader, in the church, in the spirit. You see, so let's go back to First Timothy 3. All right, First Timothy 3 and 3 says, "Not given to wine, nor striker, nor greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection without gravity." Okay, and that's another quality of a leader, someone that has their daily affairs in order. Okay, because if we read verse 5, it says, "For if a man knoweth not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of the Most High?" Okay, and that's why this wisdom that we have should spill over into our day to day, to where we managing our affairs with wisdom. Okay, because if our daily life is all over the place, there's no way we can take care of the church. You know, that's why our daily lives, okay, are we're required, to have these things in check. Now we in the flesh, we behind enemy lines, and okay, there's things that's gonna pop off, and certain things that happen, and we like, because we're in a situation where our enemy has set it up, for us as men, to where we're limited in what we can do and run in the household. Okay, but within that, man, the Lord gives us, because the Lord is giving us our authority back. You know, the Lord is giving us, that's another thing. If we move in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, He begins to give us authority back as men in our situations, man. Okay, applying His wisdom, and applying discipline, applying patience, and you know, being pleasing to the Lord, He begins to operate in our day to day. And there's certain things as men we have to be proactive in our daily life to make sure, we're on point, so we can be freed up to uh to hold down our office in the ministry, man. Okay. So um let's go back here. All right, so going back to First Timothy chapter 3, verse 5, it said, "For if a man will not have to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of the Most High? Not a novice, least being lifted up with pride, all right, he fall into condemnation of the devil." And this is why, you don't give, men, okay, rank, all right, that's young in the faith, that's young in the spirit. You see, this is why men have to be proven. Because someone that's a novice, all right, he doesn't know much, all right, and he's given too much too early. He can destroy himself, thinking that he got it. Okay, the novice goes into something that's newly planted. Okay, so men that are newly planted in the faith, okay, should uh, uh put emphasis, okay, on just studying and managing themselves. All right, because before we can, lead anything, man, we have to learn how to manage ourselves in the spirit, in the truth, man. Okay, because becoming a leader begins with what? Managing ourselves. Okay, and you've seen certain men, that break away, from leadership and break away from any type of correction and go do their own thing and destroy themselves, man. Sakari, main example. You know, they break away and go do their thing. Okay. And there's a novice that's in leadership. Now he's leading thousands of Israelites. Okay. With no experience, man. Making terrible decisions, man. Now look where they at. Okay. And plenty other guys that, have broken off and try to go do their own thing and the novice and they getting all this praise on the internet and they got this following, but they're novice in the spirit. They don't have any foundation. Okay, they didn't finish developing with the milk. Okay, and it always leads in a disaster, man. It says, moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without. Yeah, so you can't be, just this terrible nigga in the world. Okay, your name is bad everywhere. Okay, because at the end of the day, all right, we face opposition. Okay, in this world because of what we believe and who we are. And it's a spiritual thing. So there's gonna be, certain instances where it's conflicts of spirits in this world. Okay, but for the most part, man, a lot of brothers, are likable men in the world, have good reputations, man. You'll go to a restaurant that a brother, has been to several times, and it's your first time, and that brother have a good report at this spot. Certain dealings in the world, network, with brothers, and y'all, doing things outside the ministry, man, and this brother got a good report, which hey, that plays favor. That now you can benefit off that brother's good report, you know. So at the end of the day, there's certain, controversies we can't avoid. All right, because this is people just got spirits on them. This, you know, that's off, man. And sometimes it's controversial, man. For the most part, when people, come across the brethren, most of the time it's with a good report. They was done right, whatever dealings they had with the brother. Okay, so we have to be, stand up. Okay, we have to move with integrity and honor. Okay, mixed with subtlety, even amongst those that are without. It says, least he fall into a reproach and the snare of the devil. Likewise, all right, must be the deacons be grave, double tongue, not double tongue, so like you. All right, that's another thing, being firm, in what you say. We live in a society that's full of gray areas, maybes, and nah, man, you gotta be straightforward when dealing. Okay, we have to be straightforward, as we deal. Okay, and shouldn't, be any confusion. Certain times, certain times you have miscommunication, man, but that, you know, uh, uh, wishy-washy, okay? You saying this over here, but then over here you doing this, and it's like, God damn, what you got going on? You know? So not double tongue, not giving too much wine, not greedy, okay, or filthy lucre, man, not money hungry, man, not, like I say, uh, not imbalanced when it comes to the strong drink. Brother, drink strong drink, man, but it can become an imbalance, okay, if not, done in moderation, according to, a brother's tolerance, man, you know. And it says, holding the mystery of faith in a pure conscience. All right. And let these all first be proved. Okay. And then let them use the office of a deacon, being found blameless. Even so must their wives be grave, not slanderous. All right. Sober. All right. Faithful, in all things. And then it's just a mind, because brothers come into this thing with certain situations and baby mamas and all this crazy shit, you know. But then there's a thing now, okay, if you're in this faith and here it is, you have all this wisdom and knowledge, okay, and then you just go get the most ratchetest goddamn woman ever, man. Okay. Now I'm not saying your sister has to be, all right, Sarah the second. Okay. Judith Jr. You see? But you want to get something that complements your spirit, man. Because these women, hey, you get what you can get. Okay, it's America. The quality is just, goddamn. But they are decent. You can get something decent, man, that complements your spirit, man. To where you don't have all this vexation and just bring a spirit that's super contrary to what you want. you know, but hey, you like it, I love it. All right. This First Timothy 3:12 said, let the deacons be the husband of one wife, ruling their children and their own house as well. For they have, all right, used the office of a deacon well purchased to themselves a good degree. All right. So this is an NLT real quick. All right. It said, verse 13 said, those who do well as deacons will be rewarded with respect from others and will have increased confidence in their faith in Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. I am writing these things to you now, even though I hope to be with you soon, so that if I am delayed, you will know how people must conduct themselves in the household of the Most High. This is the church of the living power, which is the pillar and the foundation of truth. All right, without question, this is the great mystery of our faith. Yahweh Shai was revealed in a human body and vindicated by the Spirit. He was seen by angels and announced to nations. He was believed, all right, in throughout the world and has been taken to heaven in glory. All right, and Yahweh Shai came and fulfilled these things. You know, he was put in flesh, okay, the human body. He was vindicated by the Spirit. The spirit that he had to do miracles, the spirit to teach, okay, the spirit of all the prophecy he fulfilled, okay, you know, he was seen by angels, all right, he was taken away, in a chariot, all right, the angels came and got him out the tomb, he was resurrected, you see, he was teach to the nations, the Israelites, okay, he was a believed throughout the world, even amongst the Israelite foreigners outside of Judea, and he was taken back to glory. All right, Yahweh Shai came and he accomplished the assignment given by the Father. Okay, so that's the point. Just wanted to get into that. Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters were, edified, so once again, we give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect. Shalom.